All right, apes. What a great presentation that was. Man, Mr. Marlowe, he is awesome. I'm so glad that he came. And I mean, he's a contemporary of Shakespeare. That's so cool. Let's talk about King Lear. And I'll be back in the classroom in a couple minutes, but I didn't want to leave you hanging while I wasn't in there. I wanted you to be learning something while I was gone from the classroom. So a lot of times when I start this unit, my students say, Mr. Allen, why are we studying King Lear? You know, Miss Asmus's class is reading Macbeth. Miss Heffelman's class is reading Hamlet. Why aren't we reading one of those? We're seniors. We're supposed to be reading Hamlet, right? Like, that's the senior play. So let's talk about it because I think that it's important. I spend quite a bit of time looking at what books get put onto the AP exam and why they get put on the AP exam. And so these are the main plays that have been featured on the AP exam from Shakespeare since the beginning of the test, you know. So you can see kind of the breakdown. And Midsummer Night's Dream's been on there 3, Hamlet 5, Romeo and Juliet 5, Macbeth 6 times, Othello 8, and then King Lear is the play that's been on there the most times. It was been on there 16 times, and last year, 2014, was the last time it was on the test, and before that it was 2011. And it was kind of nice because my class read King Lear last year, and then they took the test and they all came back and they're like, oh, Mr. Allen, we all used King Lear. It was perfect. It worked out super well. You can see over here, here's the prompt for last year's test. And you can see right here, King Lear. This was about sacrifice, so it worked out perfectly. So I feel like College Board and the makers of the AP test are trying to tell me something, right? Like, you should be teaching King Lear. And that's why they feature it on the test so often. I mean, it's double Othello. And while, yeah, seniors often read Hamlet, I think that King Lear is better for a wider variety of prompts than Hamlet is. And I love Othello. That's my favorite play. And I like teaching Romeo and Juliet, but I think that I would be doing a disservice to my students if I didn't teach King Lear. Okay, now let's turn in your book to the character list, the dramatis personae. And let's talk about the major characters, the major players in ancient England. So King Lear is set in ancient England, where we have all these warring factions and these different areas. They've all been united under King Lear's banner. So he is King of England, but he's not a real king. He never existed. He's fictional. So King Lear's old, and he wants to retire. And he really likes being king, but he doesn't like the business side of being king. He doesn't like having to deal with other people's problems. He just likes all the recognition and the crowns and the riches and being able to hang out with who he wants to, that sort of stuff. So he wants to quit, and he wants to pass on the leadership of the country to the younger generation. But King Lear doesn't want to give up the power and the authority, the respect, and all the riches and everything. He still wants to be king in name. He just doesn't want to do anything. He wants to just hang out and with his knights and have fun and drink and that sort of thing. So there's this theme of passing it on to the younger generation and the older generation passing on. And King Lear and Gloucester, they represent that older generation. So King Lear has 3 daughters, and his daughters' names are Goneril, which sounds like gonorrhea, and I think it's very symbolic, Regan, and Cordelia. He has no sons, and so he really has no one to pass his kingdom on to. He has no heir. So his decision is he's going to split his kingdom into 3, which is really not the greatest decision. But let's talk about his daughters. He has 2 evil daughters, Goneril and Regan, and 1 good daughter, which is Cordelia. Goneril's the oldest, Regan is the second oldest, and Cordelia is the youngest. She's the baby. Cordelia is also King Lear's favorite. So we'll kind of go down in order. So Goneril is an evil, evil woman. She desires power more than anything else in the world. And she's going to do whatever it takes to become powerful in this world, which it's difficult because, I mean, women didn't have power in this time period. So she feels like her husband's, or not her husband, she feels like her father is an idiot and that he's been ruling England incorrectly, and she can't wait till he's out and she can take over. And so she really wants him to leave. She wants to take the power from the older generation. And she does some really awful, awful things. And she's just a bad person. She looks like, you know, she's nice on the outside, but deep inside, she's just black and evil. Her husband, the Duke of Albany, which in the play we often just refer to him as Albany, he genuinely is a nice guy. He's a good person, and he wants to do right, and he would be a really good ruler. Like, if he inherited England and became king, he would do a fine job. But he kind of gets poisoned by Goneril because she, you know, kind of has his ear, and she whispers things and gets him to do stuff. And so he does some bad things in the play, but it's not really his fault because Goneril kind of forces his hand, you know, and he has to end up doing these awful things. But he really is a good guy. Oswald is Goneril's primary servant, and he is a snake. He is a serpent. He's a bad person, and he feeds off of Goneril and her energy, and so he goes and does all of Goneril's little dirty work and stuff like that. So he's a bad guy. Let's move on to Regan. Regan is the middle child. She's still a bad person, but she's heavily influenced by Goneril. If Goneril wasn't there, Regan probably would be perfectly fine and be a nice person and everything and not be evil, but she kind of just follows. She's a follower. She does what Goneril wants her to do, and which is unfortunate. Then her husband is the Duke of Cornwall, which we often just refer to him as Cornwall in the play, and he is terrible. He's a bad person. He's evil, and he represents the abuse of power in, you know, high governmental positions and in monarchies and stuff. He is a bad guy, and he really likes to inflict pain on other people. He likes to watch people be in pain. That plays into the play later on, and he likes doing evil things, right? So then the last daughter and King Lear's favorite is Cordelia, and she is genuinely nice. She is a great person, and she loves her father, and she thinks he's done a fine job. She doesn't want to see him retire. She sees through Goneril and Regan's little charade, you know, because King Lear doesn't really see that they're truly evil at heart. Cordelia does, and she's like, these aren't good people. I don't want to be around them. She is not married at the beginning of the play, and so she has two suitors. One is the King of France, and one is the Duke of Burgundy, which we often just call him Burgundy. Both are really great guys, and both would be really good husbands for her. She's attracted the right sort of men to try and win her hand. So then we go to the Earl of Gloucester, and I know that it looks like Gloucester, but it's Gloucester. That's how you pronounce it. So Gloucester is one of the old guard, right? He's a buddy of King Lear. They both work together to unite England. They're old war heroes, and he's one of this generation that's getting too old and going to pass on the power to the next generation. And he has two sons. He has Edgar and he has Edmund. And Edgar is his legitimate son with his wife. Edmund is an illegitimate son. Edmund is a bastard. And in this play, you can actually use that word because we are using it in the proper context. So Edgar is the good son, and their names are very similar. So the way you're going to remember this is Edgar has a G in his name, so that means he's good, right? So Edgar loves his father. He is really smart. He probably would be the perfect one to inherit Gloucester's kingdom, and he really wants to be a good guy. Like the song "Nice Guys Finish Last," or the saying "Nice Guys Finish Last." That's Edgar. He gets, in trouble because he's such a nice guy, and it's not his fault, right? Edmund is the opposite of Edgar. He is not only a bastard because he's illegitimate, he is pure evil incarnate. Edmund, as you're going to find out, he wants power more than anything in the world. And because he's a bastard child, he has no power. He can't inherit anything unless he becomes legitimized by his father, which isn't going to happen because Gloucester has Edgar. So he doesn't need to legitimize his bastard son. And he's a really bad guy. So our two main villains of the play are Goneril and Edmund. And, Goneril's helped by Regan and the Duke of Cornwall. Edmund is just this evil character, just pure evil. The Earl of Kent, which we often just call him Kent, and later he'll be known by another name because he gets into a disguise, Caius. Kent is pure goodness, right? He is Lear's right-hand man. He serves Lear in everything. So if Lear was King Arthur, this is his Lancelot without the whole love triangle thing, right? This is his assistant. And King Lear dotes upon, Kent dotes upon King Lear. And it's just, like he'll do anything for King Lear. And he's like like almost puppy dog-ish, like he follows him around. The last character is the Fool. And in a lot of Shakespeare plays, there is a fool, but he has a very minor part. The Fool in this play has a major part. He's part of King Lear's entourage, and he entertains King Lear. But he's really important because he's the only one that can actually criticize King Lear. And he says things about Lear that are so smart and have such insight, but nobody else gets it. So it's kind of ironic because usually the fool is stupid, and in this one, the fool is the only one that gets it, the only one that's smart. So that's the who's who of ancient England. Let's move on a little bit, and we talked about that. While we're reading this, we're going to be annotating things. And you need to have like a pencil or a pen and then 2 colors of highlighters. I chose yellow and orange. You could choose whatever colors you want. And the pens I like, I would recommend these pens. It doesn't have to be Sharpie brand, but fine point pens because they don't bleed through the page as much. And you can write really small with them. So I would actually write down the annotations that are right here, maybe in one of the title pages or something. This is the stuff we're going to be marking up. We're going to highlight yellow for well-known lines, important plot lines. While you're writing that down, I'm going to keep talking about, what kind of to expect during this King Lear unit and how to annotate for King Lear, how to write scenes out. So this right here is how you write out acts and scenes. You use a large Roman numeral for the act and small Roman numerals for the scenes. So this says King Lear, Act 1, Scenes 1 through 3. This is King Lear, Act 3, Scene 4. So you don't have to write out that whole thing, right? And I'll be using that annotation very often. So what to expect? We're going to read most of the play in class, and we're going to act it out just like we did Antigone. I think that's the best way to do Lear. Some scenes will be assigned for homework, but like I wrote here, it's got to be quick and loose. I like to plan ahead, but with this, I really can't plan ahead as much as I would like to. I'm just going to have to say, okay, scene 3, you guys have to read it for homework, and then it's due the next time. We'll be reading Robert Frost poems while we're reading Lear. There's going to be some major Lear journaling discussions, film interpretations, and with that stage combat, we're going to be doing some stage combat assignments where you are, planning out a combat scene and explaining why you're doing what you're doing. So